These are 7 of the most overrated players going into the 2022 NFL season. Now, when making videos talking about people being overrated, there is one thing that people must emphasize that I'm going to emphasize right now. Overrated does not equal bad. There are plenty of great players who are just simply like overhyped. A lot of the people on this list are going to be on here because of injuries, because of their contracts, or because the general media and the general NFL fan base genuinely thinks that they are the bee's knees, as they say. So enough talking, we're going to get right into the video. If you guys are new and you do want to see some more videos like this, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And with that said, let's get right into it. The first name on here is Christian McCaffrey. When healthy, is one of the best players in all of football, regardless of position. But McCaffrey has played 10 games total in 2 years. That is 10 out of 33 games of football that he has played. In those 10 combined games, about 67 yards per game, 4.2 yards per carry in terms of rushing. He has 6 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. 49 receiving yards per game and 9 yards per reception in that time as well. 90% of his targets were caught, but the big thing for me is that people still consider Christian McCaffrey as a top 5 running back in the entire league, when quite simply due to his availability and due to the fact that he's only getting older, his window is closed significantly. It's like the people who still think Michael Thomas is a top 5 receiver even though he's barely played football in the last 2 years. And no, Michael Thomas is not on this list. I do think he's overrated, but I don't think he's super overrated. It just depends on really who you talk to. I think Christian McCaffrey can be a nice running back still, assuming he can stay healthy. I still think he could be an elite running back, depending, again, on his availability. I hope he does. Christian McCaffrey is one of the most exciting players when healthy, but when healthy is a big if nowadays. So I don't know, I guess we'll have to see. Next up is Najee Harris. I don't know if it's going to be a real popular one. My reasoning with this is that he gets a lot of carries, right? Najee Harris was 2nd in attempts and he was 4th in rushing yards, but this was in a run-heavy offense. The only reason why it was as run-heavy as it was is because Big Ben was their quarterback. And BearsLoseAgain has a stronger arm than Ben Roethlisberger. Keep that in mind. Okay, I probably don't, honestly. He could probably throw the shit out of football. Again, definitely impressive to an extent. The way people talk about him, you would really think he was like Derrick Henry, when in reality he's more of like I do not know, insert fucking similar back with better receiving prowess here. I have no clue. Maybe I'll figure it out when I'm editing this video. Next up is Michael Gallup. The big reason for me is injuries. Contract is also included because he did play about half of the season last year. And this year, the Cowboys signed him to a 5-year, $62 million extension. The last full season he played was in 2020, so it wasn't that far away. He played all 16 games. He caught 59 of his 105 targets. His catch percentage was among the lowest in the entire league at 184th. I'm not making that up. 843 receiving yards, which was 34th in 2020. He had 5 touchdowns, and he had about 53 yards per game, which was 45th in 2020. Now, something you must keep into account, Dak Prescott snapped his leg in half 5 games into the season, and that led to Andy Dalton kind of taking the helm there. And I think there was maybe one other quarterback. I don't know, because I think Dalton missed a game or 2 because of COVID. I'm not 100% sure, though. This year, in about 9 games, he got like 500 yards before he tore his ACL the last week of the year. And this is an example of overrated doesn't always equal like bad. I think Michael Gallup could be a really strong wide receiver too, but that really depends on if he could stay healthy. And now that he's had the significant injury, it's going to be a big if, especially for receivers. That's a bad fucking injury for receivers to have. So it's going to really depend. Next up, I know I'm going to get ridiculed for this take, Derek Carr. I am probably the leader of the Derek Carr hate train. I do not think Derek Carr is an elite quarterback, despite what most people say. In fact, that's why he's on here. I have consistently heard Derek Carr be named in the top 10 quarterbacks. And I'm not saying Derek Carr is god-awful. Derek Carr is not an elite quarterback, though. He has 2 playoff appearances. I'll give him 1 playoff appearance because I know he was hurt, but still I'll give him the, you know what I mean? Like, he was hurt in 2016 when they did make the playoffs, but he didn't play because I think he tore his ACL that year. So I'm not going to give him much shit for that. And in the game against the Bengals this year, they did only lose by a field goal. In 2021, Derek Carr threw for 4,804 yards, which was 5th in the league. He was 5th in completion percentage as well, had 23 passing touchdowns, which was 13th in the league, 14 picks he threw, which was 6th most, most. He was 14th in QBR. He had 13 fumbles and lost 5 of them. The fumbles were tied second, and the lost fumbles were tied for third most in 2021. His record as a starter as well, and he's been a starter in the NFL since I believe 2013 or 2014. Derek Carr's win-loss record throughout his entire career is 57-70. To put it into different terms, Matt Stafford, who played for the Lions for the majority of his career, in his first 127 games, he had a 60-67 record, and Matt Stafford is consistently shit on. He has a worse win-loss record than Eli Manning through his first 127 games. And Eli Manning is historically average. I know he's a folk hero because he beat Tom Brady in 2 Super Bowls, but if we're going to be real with each other right now, Eli Manning is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. He is a very, very average quarterback. I've seen people call Derek Carr like the AFC's Kirk Cousins. I thought about it a little bit more. He's a slightly better Daniel Jones. He is the AFC's version of Daniel Jones, and I want somebody to tell me I'm wrong. This is another name that's a little controversial. I feel like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's not bad. Again, overrated does not equal bad. I think Joe Burrow is definitely a top 10, top 7 quarterback, but throughout the playoffs, Burrow was pretty pedestrian, but because of that Bengals team going as far as they did, people have been calling Burrow a top 3, top 4, top 5 quarterback ever since like January. I think you can make a case, but I do not think he is. He had an excellent season this year. Despite his offensive line woes, Burrow was excellent this year. Over 4,600 passing yards, which was 6th. He led the entire league in completion percentage. He was 2nd in QBR. He was 8th in passing touchdown. He did tie for 6th most interceptions this year. And they went to a Super Bowl. I get that alone is going to raise his stock. That was the most improbable thing to probably happen in modern day sports. Everyone thought going into last season the Bengals were going to be a 4-win team at max. The most I saw in predictions were 4 wins. No one expected them to even make the playoffs or even sniff the playoffs, let alone make the Super Bowl and lose by like 3 to the best team in the entire league. I think Burrow will be better this year, or he'll be close. I don't know if the Bengals will be better necessarily. I think they might be around the same. Again, Burrow is excellent, borderline elite, but he is not a top 3 or 5 quarterback. JJ Watt. JJ Watt is he's still really good. But if we're going to be completely honest with ourselves here, he's overrated because of his reputation. He's 32 years old, and that's not a bad thing. Like, I get people age in sport. That's not a bad thing in the slightest. But people still view JJ Watt as if he's an elite defender. They view him like he's TJ Watt. I didn't count his season last year in Arizona because he only played about 7 games that year. I'm going back to his last full season, which was back in 2020 with Houston. He had 52 total tackles, which is 36 solo tied for 195th, and his 16 assisted tied for 231st in 2020. He did tie 6th in tackles for loss with 14. He had 5 total sacks, and he tied 28th in quarterback hits with 17. Watt's going to be a great rotational piece, I feel, for Arizona and their defense, because Arizona has a pretty stacked defense. But he is not the JJ Watt of old, and I think the sooner people realize that, the better it is for everybody involved. And finally, Christian Kirk. This isn't because I think Kirk's a bad receiver. I think this is just because of his contract. Kirk signed a 4-year, $72 million deal with the Jaguars, which could increase to $84 million, assuming on his incentives. And he has never had a 1,000-yard receiving season, and that includes this past season. He had 982 yards, which was 27th in 2021. For comparison, T. Higgins, who played 3 less games and played a similar role than Christian Kirk, had about 100 more yards than him. His catch percentage was about 75%, which is really good, but it did rank 51st. He had 5 total touchdowns and about 58 yards per game, which was 32nd in 2021. Again, this isn't because I think Christian Kirk is a bad player, purely due to contract. He might prove me wrong. The Jaguars do look a little improved, not much, but a bit. I'm not the biggest believer of Trevor Lawrence, so that could also be another thing. But we've seen receivers take their situations and only improve their stock. Allen Robinson's probably the biggest example, former Jaguar, ironic enough. He had Blake Bortles thrown to him, Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, a bunch of these lower tier quarterbacks, and he still was a consistent 1,000-yard guy. We'll have to see if Christian Kirk does that this year, but that's pretty up in the air at the moment. But yeah, that's it for me though. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy and you want to see some more like this, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And with that being said, guys, that's it for me. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.